working with Democrats and Republicans in the Congress, reached an agreement, a compromise on what to do with tax policy that had to do with the Bush 2001 and 2003 tax cuts. I voted against those tax cuts in 2001 and 2003, and I was not supportive, and am not supportive of what the President proposed in this compromise on the tax cuts. The President believes that this compromise that he reached was the best deal he could get, given that the Republicans were insistent that you must have the Bush 2001 and 2003 tax cuts, which were going to expire this year, extended, and extended for everyone. That means Bill Gates would get the same treatment, and actually because his income is so high, he would end up getting far more than, I suspect, well, I know anyone in this room. I don't think anyone here quite compares to Bill Gates. And so, and many of us, including the President, said, no, we can extend the Bush tax cuts, but keep them for only up to the point of the first $250,000 of income. After that, there should not be these continued tax cuts because it's too expensive. Now, again, I don't want to spend too much time, but some people are probably saying, wait a minute, if I don't have to give the federal government more of my tax money, more of my money in taxes, why does the federal government consider that a cost? I'm keeping my own money. Well, it's a cost because we have young men and women today in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're fighting a war. It costs $100,000 to keep a soldier trained and equipped every year. Somebody's got to pay for that. We have to pay to make sure that we keep the infrastructure, the roads and the highways that the federal government helped build operating. So we have a lot of things that are costing money. Education, environmental cleanup, domestic security, homeland security. And you have to pay for that. And so that's why we're a nation. That's why we're a civilized society. We pay the bills of the things that we require. Every time you cut someone's taxes, that's less money that goes into the treasury to help pay for the things that we require. There's talk that the city of LA may have to cut some of its senior citizen centers, close some of them, or reduce services at the senior citizen centers. Why? Because the cities are having a tough time. Their budgets are tight. Much of the money they get to keep this senior citizen open comes from you through the federal government, through your federal taxpayer dollars that come back to you. But if we're cutting taxes for people, there's less money in the Treasury. And the Treasury then has to make the decision, okay? Do we equip our soldiers the way we need to? Do we keep these senior citizen centers open? Well, at some point the money runs out and you have to decide what you do. That's why it costs you money when you have tax cuts. And the final point on the tax cuts. Average American in this country who makes about $40,000 to $60,000. That's around the middle of America. $40,000 to $60,000. These Bush tax cuts that were passed in 2001 and 2003 and are still in place, they gave the average American about a $400, $500 tax cut over the year. So about $40, $50 a month is what you got in these tax cuts. The average billionaire, if you have income of about $1 million, your average tax cut in a year was about $112,000. And so the difference is that some of us believe that maybe this is not a good time when the economy's not good to have the tax cuts expire for everyone, because chances are if you're a $40,000 or $50,000 income, you're taking advantage of the $400 to $500 extra that's in your pocket because your taxes remained a little low. And you probably will spend it on some pretty valuable activities or items. You had to fix the washer. You had to buy new shoes for your kids for school. But once you're in the $1 million income bracket, chances are you're not going to need to buy your kid a new pair of shoes or fix the washer. And whether or not you actually spend the $112,000 that you get is a question that most economists say is unlikely. The higher your income, the less you rely on that tax cut to fuel your consumer needs. And therefore, if it's not immediately necessary for you to use it to buy something that you consume, less likely that you create new economic activity. If you have to buy that new washer because the washer broke, or you have to buy your kid a pair of shoes, some business got your money because you gave them business. That helps stimulate the economy. And so we have to make some decisions. I don't want people to pay any more taxes than necessary, but at the same time, I don't want people to tell me that we're not going to fund the needs of our young men and women in uniform, that we're not going to keep the senior citizen centers that help our seniors because we didn't have enough revenues to do what we needed to do. And so we've got these big deficits and we have all these things to do. So that's the debate around the tax cuts. That's why some of us are not supportive of what the president has reached in this agreement. By the way, what the president said in reaching this compromise with the Republicans was this: the Republicans would not allow a bill to pass the Congress for his signature that on the tax cuts that focused only on the middle class, that without including the upper income families, the 2% other families, that they would not allow the bill to pass. In the House of Representatives last week, we passed the bill that focused only on people who had incomes of $250,000 or below. By the way, Bill Gates would get the benefit from that because the first $250,000 of his income would be treated tax-wise the same way as yours would be. So every single American who paid taxes would get a tax cut up to the first $250,000 of their income. What we simply said in the House of Representatives is that we would not go, por favor. What we said was that beyond $250,000, we should not continue to provide the tax cuts because they get very expensive. It costs about $700 billion to extend those tax cuts for people who make more than $250,000 or above their first $250,000. But we were willing to give it to every single American, including the richest Americans, up to their first $250,000 of income. That passed in the House. The Senate tried to pass it and got 53 votes, which under normal circumstances and under the Constitution means it passes the Senate and it should become law because the President said he would sign it. But because of the procedures in the Senate, where the Republicans could demand that it pass by 60 votes, it never got to the President. And so the Republicans said, we won't let anything pass on middle class tax cuts unless it includes the tax cuts for the wealthiest as well. And so the President said, we could go on like this forever. I don't think we should. And this is a compromise that lets us move forward, because we can't have it all fail and fall to the ground and everyone, including the middle class and the working class, get hit with a tax, the tax rates going back to what they were. And so he says he was held hostage, the middle class was held hostage, and that he would move forward. On top of that, by the way, he was willing to give away tax relief to the very, very, very wealthiest people. The top, less than 2/10 of 1% wealthiest Americans do what's called the estate tax, where when you die, all the wealth that you have that you've stopped from being taxed because you've held on to it, like if you own your home and you never sell it, your tax rates don't go up, right? But when you die and you transfer it, it now transfers over at the new market rates. Well, under the estate tax, you get to shield all that income from taxation. Now you would say, hey, that's good for me. And it is. Guess how good it is for Bill Gates. And so what happens is the Treasury, once again, loses lots of money. How much? About $70 billion every year. Because that's how wealthy the wealthiest Americans are. The Republicans fought to include protections for the wealthiest Americans in the estate tax. And the President signed off on it. So now they're going to get to shelter up to $10 million of their income from any taxation. Now, if you had $10 million in total income or wealth, you'd say that's a pretty good deal. Most Americans don't have even $1 million in wealth. And so once again, the breaks, the protections are going to the very, very wealthiest in America. But guess what? Because we're doing it through deficit spending, we're having to borrow the money now to pay for all of our, guess who pays to give the wealthy the tax cut. Everybody. Every single one of us. Because we still have to fund our soldier in Iraq. We still have to keep the lights on in this senior center. And so, all of us are paying for the tax cuts that are going to fewer and fewer people. That's why I'm against it. I'm not against giving you tax cuts. But if you also want me to make sure that your son or your grandson or your granddaughter is well equipped in Iraq, we got to pay for it. And so there are the differences, and that's the problem that we have, is that the president said, well, I got some things, and one of them was unemployment benefits would be included in this compromise for 1 year. The tax cuts are going to go for 2 years, and likely forever. And so to me, that's the kind of bargain I'm not willing to make, because it costs way